Yo, what's up, y'all? Exciting things going on with the May podcast, man. We decided to go to a new app because Zoom be tweaking with that split and everything. So we decided to go in full send on Riverside. So that's where we're at right now. That's where you'll see us at on YouTube. But the Apple Podcast still got the same audio coming in from the Roadcaster. All cool, all great. That'll be set. So what's up, Malcolm, man? How you been, bro?
I've been good. Been working on a lot of different things. The battle rap channel for YouTube is in full swing. Been gaining a good amount of traction on there. I did this series called the Rappers Pentagon series, where we pretty much talk about top five in each category. So, like, let's say in football, right, you have top five pass rushers, top five receivers, top five quarterbacks. In basketball, right, you have, top five big men, top five centers. But if you even want to make it a little bit even more minute or more particular, you would say like top five scorers. You know what I'm saying? Top five defensive players, top five, assist men and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what we're doing in a battle rap sense. Is talking about top five performers, top five punchers, people that do the best punchlines, top five pins in terms of overall writing skills and stuff like that. And it's getting a lot of traction because I feel like, with the help of you, by the way, when you pretty much put me on to Thinking Basketball or whatever, where they do like an analytical breakdown of certain things, whatever, like the minute details that end up making like a immense impact on why someone is ranked somewhere. I kind of use that same mentality, maybe not the exact same like statistical analysis stuff, but the same type of meticulous work that it takes to break down a certain thing. I kind of took that and applied it to the battle rap sense, along with that, and along with like Watch Mojo that does all those lists or whatever about top 10 movies and all that. Pretty much bringing that into the battle rap realm and making it tangible and accessible, for that community. So, but it's going really well. Gaining a lot of traction, and love it so far. What about you, man? I know you were trying to get into the Twitch situation with the Call of Duty and all that.
So before we talk about me, I just want to ask you this: with your videos, was there like any sort of like battle rap like YouTuber that you really watched and said, okay, I'm going to try to mirror my videos after him, or do you find your content like in your own lane?
Absolutely. So there's a guy named Jay Black who's very monumental in battle rap media. It's been around since 2011, 2012. Started off as like pretty much, the entertainment comedian guy, what I'm saying, that does a lot of reaction videos and stuff like that, which in the early 2010s, reaction videos like were the hottest thing you could do, whatever. But eventually he turned into an actual analyst. Not to say he never was one, but he made a full transition into an actual analyst to where he was very professional, from wearing suits, from having his own studio and breaking down battles in a very professional setting. So Jay Black for sure, a publication called LTBR, Let's Talk Battle Rap. They do battle rap stats, whatever, that, pretty much influenced me to kind of take on a little bit more of like the analytical side as well. Alongside with like people like Ledge from Top Tier Podcast. It's been countless, battle rap media people, 3 Letterman from PSA Hip Hop, and even like, people outside of battle rap, right? So like Dead End Hip Hop, which I kind of put you on before, that little conversational piece, the conversational pieces that they do. Even like a guy named 616 Entertainment, where he does more of the documentary stuff for a video game. So like he does like a whole documentary of a video game series, whether it's God of War, whether it's like the old wrestling games and stuff like that. So it's a collection of YouTubers that I kind of like am inspired. I think I mentioned to you, Casey Crawley. He had like a little series called Making the Case, where he talks about each 8 or 7 basketball players who have a case of being the GOAT, and he goes down their career and creates a storyline behind it, which is a huge influence on my channel, just because I'm more of like a storyline, a storyline person, or whatever. I try to construct my stuff into a coherent story. But those are like a collection of people that I'm inspired by. I'm saying those are a collection of people that kind of influence my channel, and I try to make it with my own flavor, with my own flair. But I have no problem, giving them their kudos, giving them their shout outs. Hell, they're in my YouTube description, right? I have like a whole playlist of all the YouTubers that I recommend, and those are all the YouTubers that influenced my channel. So.
It's dope. That's dope. So what I've been up to, just creatively lately, I want to do this documentary. I think I want to make it like maybe 30, 45 minutes. And I'm sort of still in those infancy stages where I'm still trying to figure out, because again, I've showed you that I have these, hold on, I can show you. They're just right here. So I have these Rodecaster Wireless 2 mics, right? And I still need to get a little more comfortable using them. But for this documentary, what I plan on doing is interviewing people, just asking them about their parents' relationship. So like just the relationship that they saw that their parents had, and sort of dissecting how that relationship has then affected, and like the tendencies that you saw, whether it's the good or the bad or whatever, what you saw there, how that affects your relationships that you have or have been in terms of romantic relationships, and how that affects the relationships that you're in currently. So I think I have a list of 10 people. And I try to get a lot of people that I could actually go and sort of interview in person. I try to get as many people I could go in person and interview, just so I could sort of have that excuse to use my brother's camera and those mics. But I have a list of 10 people who I could potentially interview. And even if I end up interviewing all of them, I know for damn well I'm not going to use all that footage at all. But I plan on, that's what I've been working on, to put together a list. So I think I have like 11, maybe 12 people on the list now. I have 3 questions, but I also don't want to sort of, stick to those questions, right? It's sort of more of a way to kind of guide the conversation, because I also know from a lot of the people that I'm interviewing, I know that I know them personally, so I know some of their stories, some of the things they're saying, so I can sort of, depending on the person, sort of prod and probe for those different types of questions and be like, okay, well, I understand this is what happened, so how did that affect you? But I think the best question I've come up with is just, what kind of events did you see between like basically like events or interactions that you've seen between your parents, and like how did those affect you, and how do they affect you feel like your outlook on relationships and on their relationship? I think that's probably the best question I've come up with so far, though. But there's that, still coaching. We're starting to really dive into media on our Instagram pages. I know you've seen it. So now, since again with those wireless mics, once I really figure out how they work and everything, what we can start doing is, and we did a little bit today, was I was walking around with just one of the Rodecaster mics just plugged up and connected to some dude's phone who does all of our. I'm pretty sure he's a student there, but he does all of our video stuff because he's big into that. So walked around with it and just started asking the kids the question today, which was, "Hey, what's your go-to pre-game meal?" And I think the best response we got when our kids said McDonald's, Ultra versus Science, and I was like, you know what, that's a funny little response. I like that one. I like that one.
Nah, he said Ocho said he built a callus in his body from eating McDonald's before games. That is funny.
Hey, shout out to Ocho, bro. He funny. Chad Johnson's definitely funny. But nice little catching up segment. Segment number 2, we want to talk about the whole Brittany Griner situation. So I'll let you take the lead on this one,
I actually had a conversation with Miles on air about this just the other day. Very slippery slope, very interesting situation, right? You have one side that says that like, well, Brittany should have knew what situation she was walking into, going into Russia during the climate of Russia right now, understanding her demographic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Her, and she should have had a better understanding of like what could potentially happen. Then there's the other side of like understanding that, but like the extreme of the situation, right? Like how extreme the sentencing ended up being. Then there's also like a commentary on like double standard, right? Like if that was a such and such player for the NBA, like would they still be in the same circumstances or stuff of that nature? Overall, I just think it's pretty much just a unfortunate situation. I feel like for one, from what I've seen, right, she's never had any outside, outside situations happen in her career. She's very professional, one of the better, uh, you know, woman basketball players for the WNBA. One of the best, I'm trying to say this in a more respectful way, but like she's one of the more dominant. She's one of the more dominant big ladies in the NBA as well. Because I mean, she's one of the tallest women to ever grace the WNBA as well too. I have nothing but great things to say, about her. But in terms of the situation, being held captive in Russia, and being sentenced to 9 years is really, really extreme, especially, with just the whole climate of marijuana today, right, where it's been legalized in certain states and stuff like that. In our country, right, it just creates a context that makes us feel like that is too extreme. And for me, it is too extreme. But understanding that, like, other countries are different, the circumstances of the situation and stuff like that. Um, I can honestly say it's just an unfortunate situation. Um, I think it's wrong that she's been sentenced to 9 years, but can I honestly say that she was wrong for getting sentenced to a certain time period? I can't, especially with that being law restrictions, and especially with what I'm saying. Like everyone knows, like, right, how strict other countries are when it comes to certain stuff like that. Um, but overall, just a unfortunate situation. Hopefully, she's her lawyers and whomever can work through, bringing the sentencing down to a lesser penalty, because 9 years is very extreme. And I also just think of just like what that does to her career. I know she's been in the league for a good amount of time, but she was still a prominent woman in the WNBA, and people don't come back the same from
Right.
jail. Whether it's Muhammad Ali, whether it's Mike Tyson, what I'm saying, like, people just don't come back regular from jail and go on to live their career. And like I said, it's just such a slippery slope, because we know, like I mentioned, the double standard, right, of pardon me, of the double standard of just people saying, like, if that was a player from the NBA, right, like, maybe circumstances would be different. They wouldn't have even been in jail or whatever. Like, they would have been pardoned or something like that. Um, and I'm very cognizant of that, but just overall unfortunate situation. So that's pretty much all I can
So
say.
I was listening while you were talking, but I was on my phone trying to find, because I remember seeing that meme comparing Brittany Griner to that whole situation with the white woman who was found with a bunch more um grams of those cartridges on her, and she was able to like walk away basically with no prison time. Um, I'm not sure when exactly that happened, but I feel like it's not in the same time period. Um, and it's probably because the world is kind of at. I don't think Americans understand just how tense the relationship between America and Russia is at this moment. Just because Russia is having a whole war in the Ukraine right now, and the U.S. is one of the countries that's supplying the Ukraine with like rocket launchers. So like they're supplying them with, like, Stingers, which are, and javelins, which are sort of like anti-air and anti-tank missiles. They'll give them new artillery pieces to train on. They've been supplying them with guns and ammunition. And I'm no, they're not giving them tanks, but they're giving them all these weapons that have basically been making life for the Russian military kind of hard in Ukraine. Even though they're starting to really turn that whole situation around, and now we're starting to see some of these Ukrainian defenses starting to fall. But at the end of the day, this is not like every military advisor in the world did not think Ukraine would last this long. They thought, maybe a month or two, like 3 weeks, maybe lucky. They'd be lucky to last like 3 weeks. But I think it's sort of stupid. Well, maybe not stupid, but I think I know you heard that thunder. That was loud. But I think it's kind of important. I think it's important to understand and put the whole situation into context, because I think the relationship between America and Russia, especially since Vladimir Putin has been president, has sort of really soured. And so on top of that, you also have to realize that they're at war right now. Um, they really don't like a relationship between Russia and America are at an all time low compared to, since like the Cold War was going on. And I think that plays a factor into why she's in prison there. Sorosie's an African American woman, yes, but I think people might be putting just a tad bit too much into race, just because in American society, race is just this so important thing, and our society is kind of based around race. Whereas in a country like Russia, I don't know, I could be ignorant, but I don't think a country like Russia is really built off of something like systemic racism like that. Because they were like one of the,
maybe not to the same
no,
extreme.
I think
I would say maybe not to the same
America
extreme.
is, again, sort of its own world, and I think Americans don't understand that our view of race does not transfer very well outside of the globe in today's society. Just because you have places like South Africa, which is very similar to us, but we still don't talk about it in America. And I think, that being a taboo has really hurt us. But also, Russia wasn't really a country that was colonizing, Africa and the Pacific Ocean region, just because they've always had sort of their own problems going on, and they were mainly focused on just trying to, one, sort of consolidate countries like Mongolia. But I think, you don't really see, like, was not an empire that really colonized places like Africa and like too much into these Pacific Island areas or the Caribbean or these other areas, just because they couldn't really do it, just because Russia for like a while technology wise was behind the rest of Europe for so long. Like if you study, I know I'm going on a sort of a tangent, but I promise it'll come back to Brittany Griner. But if you do your research and everything, before Russia entered World War One, they were still in a serfdom type of government. So where like you still had a lord who was in charge of serfs who worked the land for him, and he owned the land and he gave them lots, and they had to basically give whatever they farmed to the lord. Like they were still in the feudal system while the rest of Europe is getting ready. The Industrial Revolution has happened. They have all these factories and they're getting ready to sort of enter this modern age. You saw Russia, who's kind of left behind, and I think that's important because I think that kind of reflects Russian society and understanding that they don't have that same type of racism that they do in America. And the reason why Brittany Griner was in prison for 9 years doesn't have to do anything with her race. Like everybody's trying to make it seem like, just, if I feel like that's being ignorant of Russian history, not understanding sort of the history behind Russia, what's gone on in that country. I feel like it's more of United States and Russia's relationship isn't really that good. Like since Vladimir Putin's been in, it hasn't really been that great, but it's at an all-time low that we've seen since the Cold War, just because we're supplying somebody who they're at war with right now. So I think that plays more into why Brittany Griner got those 9 years and why she's still there for that little amount, because it's more of she's an American citizen. She's not from here. Let's just take advantage of her. And then the other thing that people have been talking about is like, why hasn't President Biden really tried? And I think, I forget the dude's name, but he finally did it. He offered this Russian like gun trafficker, I forget his name, but he offered him in exchange for like Brittany Griner, which, Twitter is hilarious because it's kind of fraud that we're sort of talking about these people like this is like a sports trade. But in all honesty, I can't really blame Joe Biden for not trying to bring Brittany Griner home if it means he has to exchange somebody who is known to supply groups like I don't think he's supplied Taliban, but who's known to supply groups that are anti-American, and that a lot of times, as the president, you're sending American troops into these areas, and they're being supplied by this Russian, and it's like, I can't really blame him for not wanting to trade. Try to bring Brittany Griner up and having to give him up because I think that's what Russia asked for, and not wanting to give him up just because he's this major weapon supplier and dealer and trafficker that has put weapons into these areas into the hands of people that, as a president, you have to send your troops into. I can't blame him for that. And so, like, I might get a little bit of blast back, a little bit of hate. Maybe I can't say I'll get canceled because I'm not big enough. But I think my view is kind of, opposite of what a lot of people think, just because a lot of people are like, free her out, which is still free her. At the end of the day, it's a bogus charge. But you also have to, I feel like it was a lapse of judgment on her hand. There, I understand she really only had maybe like half of a cart or something like that. But you have to understand the whole political climate of the area you're going into and what's happening in the world, because you're going to this whole country that's at war, who the United States has sanctioned heavily, the rest of the world has sanctioned heavily. So now their economy is sort of on the brink of collapsing. And also in Europe, that's why gas prices went up, because I don't think people understand, like, Russia is a major exporter of oil. And so when that happens and you're putting all these sanctions on them and you're not taking oil from Russia, it's okay, well, gas is going to go up because that's a major supply of oil in the world. But I think people they just aren't paying attention to the whole global climate and what's happening around the world and how the U.S. is affecting that and how that affects the relationship between the U.S. and Russia, and why sort of she's kind of getting the blunt of that, the front end of that sort of buildup, because it's like, okay, well, she's American, she messed up, and America is kind of putting all these sanctions and supplying Ukraine with weapons, everything. Let's sort of take this out on her. And I think not mentioning that stuff is kind of doing the whole situation sort of disjustice in the fact that we're not looking at the situation correctly and going, oh, people see that whole stat and go, oh, it's racism, but that's not how Russian society has ever really been structured. So that kind of confuses me, but that's my little spiel.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was probing at a little bit, just like, circumstances are just a little bit different. I still think that there is a small discussion that we could have on, like, the double standard side, because I genuinely feel like if it was an NBA player,
Oh yeah,
then
yeah.
I don't know if it would have been as extreme, or the person probably would have been home by now. So I do think there's a commentary on that regard, right? So there's that. Overall messed up situation. Like I said, hopefully, they can work towards a lesser sentence, and
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
hopefully,
I know it sounded like I'm kind of rooting for her to stay there. No, I hope she comes home. At the end of the day, I think she, marijuana bogus charges. And I get people are upset, but going through Twitter, I typed in trying to look for that graphic where they were comparing her and that white woman, but I was seeing a lot of, people are upset at Brittany Griner, yet there are people who are locked up on even more bogus charges in the U.S. that we don't talk about. But whatever. Let's not make this whole. I hate when people do that. Let's not make this whole bad situation about something else. We just need to focus on sort of what's going on right now. And at the end of the day, she's in a situation that she might have gotten herself in, but it's an unfair situation. She doesn't deserve to be in a country that she doesn't like. She'll go over there to play a couple games, but that's not where she's from. That's not her native land. So I think at the end of the day, it's still free Brittany Griner. I hope she's able to come home, but I think just being able to really understand what's happening and look at the situation for what it is, and not just try to say, oh, it's racism, because that's how we would view it in America. I think that matters too.
shifting over into a lighter topic, we can touch on a little bit about the NFL. We actually are this close to actual. I mean, they played the Hall of Fame game, so that goes to show you, like, but that goes to show you that football is literally around the corner. And I'm very excited for it. And we were just talking about how, like, we've seen some training camp, you know what I'm saying, sequences alongside, like, some clips and stuff like that. Um, So, what's your excitement for football? My excitement for football is probably at an all time high, just because this is like my first or my second, excuse me, my second season. I'll be able to watch out of school or whatever. So I'm not, so I can watch it as a spectator as opposed to a fresh player that was once playing a game or whatever. Not to say I'm far removed from that, but there's a little bit less. Um, I'm a little bit less tense when I'm watching a game because it's like cause you have that player instinct in you that make you watch the game from a different perspective. So how is your excitement level for this upcoming
So to
season?
touch on what you just said, I still find myself watching the game and I think being a coach has made it even worse to where I look at like, what everybody's doing
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sort of
I
try
feel
to
you,
break
bro.
that down. But I still watch the game like I'm a player watching film. I remember watching, I think it was the Rams. Yeah, it was the Rams and the Titans. And this is like Derrick Henry is out, and the Titans are at the goal line, and they end up scoring on this play because Ryan Tannehill fakes the handoff and runs the boot. And I'm thinking the whole time that backside defender, because this is something that Ryan Tannehill has done multiple times in Tennessee. Like this is sort of, yeah, exactly. This is sort of
The
a
DNs
tendency.
most definitely
So
have
either the
that.
D end or somebody on the backside, like because I like when I was watching, I'm like Ryan Tannehill's probably going to end up keeping this and bootlegging and scoring, and that's what happened. And I'm like, they might have drilled on, they might have not, but just being like understanding the situation of having been a player, I feel like I probably would have made that tackle for loss just because if I'm on that backside, I'm not gonna go with that run. I'm gonna make sure Ryan Tannehill
Yeah, I'm about to
doesn't
say,
have
why
the
would you
ball
flow
because
that play?
he's known to fake that handoff and boot into the end zone wide open. Um, there's that, and then during the Super Bowl, I remember when they motioned Jamar Chase and they threw like a little screen to him, which they got like I think 10 yards on. Like why they were motioning like I was like they're about to throw it to Jamar Chase right now, short screen, and they threw it. My mom's like, "How'd you know?" I'm like, to me, it's just obvious. Anytime you see there are some teams like Center Groves that use motion as distraction, but anytime you're motioning your best player on the field, you're probably gonna give him the ball. And so motioning him to the side where he has receivers that can block from him, like okay, they're automatically throwing the screen. But I don't know. I feel like I'm always more excited for football than basketball every year, just because I feel like with the NFL, football is probably like this in general. It's just more parity in the NFL than there ever will be in the NBA, no matter what we try to do. And I think it's just because,
Yeah. Even though in the NFL we've had like the Patriots win years and years in a row, it's just like for the most part every Super Bowl they win is at least like it's one
yeah,
possession, so it's not like
there's that,
they be winning, they be
there's that. But I think a
dominating,
lot
you
of the
know.
times when the Patriots do go to the Super Bowl, a lot of you watch the games during the season. Yeah, there's some seasons where they're dominant. Like the year they beat the Rams, that's the year where even though they won that Super Bowl, I don't think if you had like by the time the regular season ended, I don't think people would have been like, yeah, the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl. They're gonna win it. I don't like even though they go to the Super Bowl, they win a lot of the time. And like Tom Brady, I still think a lot of people are like, I don't think they're gonna go to the Super Bowl. And I don't think they're gonna go to the Super
They're
Bowl.
not the
Yeah, a lot of
favorites. They're
times
most
they're
definitely
also
not the
not the
regular
yeah,
season
exactly.
favorites.
So I
Yeah.
feel like it's always more parity with that. But I'm
Okay.
also excited just because there's so many just talented quarterbacks. We get to see Lamar Jackson back with his whole squad, hopefully. Bart knocking on wood, but barring injuries. Just because on Twitter lately, I've been seeing a lot of slander on like from anonymous defensive coordinators in the league talk about how I don't care if Lamar Jackson wins 12 MVPs, he just won't be that guy. Or like how Patrick, or like somebody was talking about Patrick Mahomes saying once you take away his first read, he sort of runs around and then still throws to his first read or something like that. But I think that just shows, again, people are sort of attacking black quarterbacks just because if you really, and I like Pro Football Focus because they broke this down. They said he was number one in terms of yards and attempts on throws that were past his first read. So it's like he's obviously reading the field. So, but this is probably why he was torching people like he does, just because people are just I think there are a lot of people who still don't believe in the black quarterback, which is a problem. But I'm excited to see that. The new uniforms, I'm definitely excited to see those too. Even though they're trying to spice up a little bit, although I feel like it's still too many black ones. And the Bears' new shit is definitely ass. I'm sorry, I had to tell you that. Orange, an orange helmet, that shit is ass.
I don't really. I'm not really. I was never really all the way on the whole alternative jerseys.
I like some of them.
Stitch. I mean, I like the Eagles. I like the Eagles joints. The
I
Eagles
think I
joints are
think
pretty
those are
cool.
basic.
The only ultimate jerseys I used to like back in the day was when Seattle used to wear their green. They were actually one of the first teams in the early 2000s or 2010, excuse me, that were really like using their alternative jerseys as like them and the Broncos. So the Broncos had like
Yeah.
their blue, their navy joints. They had the white joints, and they
Mm-hmm.
had their orange. And then like the Seattle had their grays. That I used to love their grays. Um, but yeah, I was not
I
really
love
into the
that.
alternative
I love that
jerseys. I like
stuff.
that.
I think it's too many black, like all blacks, but I think the like the Jets make sense because they already had an all black uniform, so give them a black helmet. I like the Panthers too, but um, I'm just excited that they're starting to bring back new uniforms, like the Bengals with the all white. I think that's gonna be crispy. And then I also like, I don't know if many people like these uniforms, but in terms of the Patriots, because they're bringing back that throwback uniform with the actual like dude hiking the ball in those red jerseys. I actually like those uniforms. I'm not gonna lie, I do. I like those. I think those are clean. But there's that, and then just again, I think it's the same thing like I just said, but we have all these elite quarterbacks sort of, you have all these quarterbacks, or you have to come up with the top 10, but you could really make the argument that for like 12 to 15 people that you could say, okay, they're a top 10 quarterback. And I think that's exciting. I'm excited to see like some like that connection, the renewed connection of Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, that connection coming from Fresno State. I'm excited to see what they can do together. But I think one thing that's kind of making me anxious is just where Odell's going to sign, because I still think Odell can be a top 5 receiver in the league, in my opinion. So I feel like if he signs with the Rams, people that's depending on how Matthew Stafford plays. Even though he threw the most picks last year, he was still playing pretty well. But I feel like he goes to the Rams, that's gonna be issues because you have Cooper Kupp, you got Allen Robinson, and then you got Odell Beckham. Like those are all the guys who could all be number 1 receivers on any team. But now they're all on one team, so it's like you can double team one, and then you have these other 2 guys just sort of going one-on-one the whole game, and like you're gonna get torn up by them. There's that.
Will the Rams be the first team in, I think,
Yeah, it'll be.
Will they be the first team in 16 years? Will they be the first team in 16 years?
I don't
to
think so.
repeat?
And it's crazy. I don't think they're.
I don't feel like we're gonna repeat the NFL for a very long time.
So.
Like I feel like it's gonna be a very long time.
Even though they made all these moves, I think they're my favorite to make it out of the NFC. But I just think the AFC is just too strong this year. Because really, like when you really think about it, it's really only 2 teams that I feel like can make it out of the NFC. It's really between the Bucks and the Rams. Like it's one of those teams are going to go to the Super Bowl. I don't see the Packers doing it, one, because they don't. They did draft that new receiver, but they don't really have the weapons. Not to mention Aaron Rodgers is all-time great when it comes to choking the playoffs. And don't let him see the 49ers. It's over. It's an automatic win. Anytime Aaron Rodgers plays the 49ers in the playoffs, I'm betting on the 49ers, bro.
I was also going to say that everybody's jumping on the Eagles, man.
Jalen Hurts. Like, I understand they're great, but Jalen Hurts still has a lot of issues and a lot of problems that make me kind of scared to really be like, oh yeah, the Eagles going to make that jump. Jalen Hurts has to make that jump. It doesn't matter how good the weapons are around him. If your quarterback still doesn't understand how to,
he carried them to the playoffs.
I mean, he did, but he also there's a throw where he ended up as an interception because the thing with Jalen Hurts is, if his first read is not open and he feels pressure, he likes to get out of the pocket to extend the play and then throw the ball. Whereas sometimes, like on this throw that I'm talking about, it would have been beneficial for him because he had Devontae Adams ran like a stop and go, and he was wide open in the end zone, but he throws a pick just because instead of staying in the pocket, taking that step up in that pocket and throwing that ball on time, Jalen Hurts escapes the pocket and then tries to throw it to him late. And by that time, I forget who the safety is, but the safety rotates over and picks him. And I think it's that, and then Jalen Hurts also doesn't like throwing in the middle of the field. And I think it's the same kind of thing that Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson kind of have, where they don't really throw in the middle of the field. Now, Kyler and Russell Wilson, you can make the argument that they can't see over the line, so they're not going to throw in the middle because they can't see that area. But Jalen Hurts is tall enough to where he should be able to see over his line. He just doesn't really throw the ball over the middle. So I think it's just he's definitely improved. He's definitely gotten better, but I don't think. And it's like I hate saying this because it always sounds like I'm hating on the black man, but I'm coming from this. I'm from like watching film. Like I just don't think he makes that leap into they're going to be a Super Bowl contender, because I don't think he makes that leap to make them that Super Bowl contender. Just because teams were mainly playing cover two over, because the Eagles last year ran a lot of like flood type concepts to where there was 3 levels, and it's 3 levels on one end. You got maybe a 5-yard out, a sort of clear out route like a fade, or you might have somebody coming over from the other side. But a lot of the times they'd have like a 5-yard route, a fade, and like a 10-yard out. So just trying to make, let's say you're in a cover 3, right? That linebacker is usually responsible for that hook the curl the flat, trying to put him into conflict to where he has to pick, and wherever he picks, you go opposite of where he picked. But with that makes teams just play a whole bunch of cover 2, just because the Bucks, again, watch that playoff game with the Bucks, you'll see it. The Bucks played a bunch of 2 high look safeties, a bunch of sort of like cover 2 coverages, and left the middle of the field open, because they're like, Jalen Hurts doesn't throw to the middle of the field anyway, so why are we worried about him throwing to the middle of the field? And as a defensive player, everybody knows that the middle of the field is the biggest weakness. Like if you can figure out how to get that and attack that with efficiency and often,
all the greats
will attack that middle of the field.
So that's what I get with you saying.
So there's that, and then one more thing I'm excited to see. I just want to see, because like a lot of people have been kind of bashing Tua and Tyreek Hill, saying it was a bad move that he went over there, even though when his last season, KC, I think he only caught like 1 fade. Most of his routes were like sort of drags, underneath routes, slants, routes where he could catch the ball and continue running, just because he's that great of an open field runner and that great was running after the catch. So I'm excited to see what Tua can do, just because it's sort of, it's for me, I always like to, and I went, and I think it's a good rule, because I was watching this dude, his name is Zach Somler. He's sort of runs Strong Opinion Sports, and he used to be a quarterback in college, and he breaks it down. And I think I like this rule. He talks about how he waits 3 years before he completely judges a quarterback in terms of, are they a bust or not. And this is like year 3 for Tua. So for me, this is really why I get to see if Tua is really that kind of bust where they need to move on from it. I think Jalen Hurts is kind of in that same argument too, where are they a bust and you have to move on from them, or have they made enough progress to where you can start trying to build your team around them?
Yeah, I feel like the 3 years is a good threshold, because I remember Cam Newton had an excellent, first year. Second year, he took a fall back, but then third year, made it to the divisional finals. And then by the 4th year or 5th year, he was MVP, Super Bowl contender, and all that. So I do think that like 3 years is a great threshold. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like after 3 years and you still haven't figured it out,
you're done for it. It's cool. Move on. But I'm excited to see Tua, and just I'll go one more after this, just because I just thought of it. But I'm excited to see Tua and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle just sort of operate in that system and see just how effective those two can be, even though I think it'll still kind of hurt Tyreek's production, not because he can't run, not because he's no longer running fades. He's going to have somebody like Patrick Mahomes to really throw that deep ball, just because him and Jalen Waddle are really similar when it comes to archetypes of receivers, so they'll really be running the same type of routes, and so you're not going to give the ball to Tyreek as much, because Jalen Waddle can do the exact same thing that Tyreek Hill is going to provide for you. So there's that, and then I'm also excited to see Justin Jefferson this year. The Vikings just got a new head coach and offensive coordinator, and they're talking about using Justin Jefferson sort of like Cooper Kupp, and how the Rams use Cooper Kupp. And I think that's important, just because they like to put Cooper Kupp in the slot a lot. So we're going to see Justin Jefferson in the slot a lot with these mismatches. But also, I don't think Cooper Kupp gets enough credit for being the great blocking receiver that he is. Like the Rams are one of the few teams that can leave 3 or more wideouts in and still block for the run and still have great production out the run game. And I think Justin Jefferson, not saying he's as good of a blocker as Cooper Kupp, but I think he's on that same level to where he can block well enough to where you can use him like that. So I think Justin Jefferson is somebody to watch out for, who could have just this very big year just because he's going to be in an offense that's going to design him in that same type of Cooper Cup role to now where he's going to be getting these mismatches. He's going to be on the field more. He'll be in the slot more. So I think I'm excited to see what he does this year.
I can echo everything you said. A couple other things though. Very excited to see, Russ in a new uniform this season. You know what I'm saying? Just with the Broncos, there's a lot of. I think the hype was pretty high early on, but kind of faded away because there's other things going on around the league. But Russ in that AFC West against, what I'm saying, the Card, the Mahomes, stuff like that. Which this is probably the first high profile matchup that we'll see between Mahomes and Russell Wilson. So that's very exciting, and we'll see it 2 times out of the year. So that's very exciting. I do think that the Eagles have taken a leap further with just some of their acquisitions over the course of the offseason as well. I love the fact that Tom Brady said, "Okay, I'm retiring for 2 weeks. I can't do this no more. I need to come back." And he's came back. Now that would be insane, and that's another insane thing is like if Tom Brady's able to come back and even make the playoffs again after retiring for whatever. Like he already felt like he was already at the top of the league, but he wanted to do his best Brett Favre impression and come back and cause some wreck. No, but I'm just overall excited for just how things are, and then like you said about the parity, like I feel like there's no like team that's like heads and shoulders better than the rest. I feel like you have teams that are like more in a better position than the rest. And I'm also excited to see what Kansas City does, what Buffalo does, because Buffalo's been knocking at the door for the past 2 or 3 years, and they just missed the mark every year. With Kansas City, they were beating the Bengals by, I want to say, 10 points going into the third. So they very well could have been in that Super Bowl again. But then when you take away Tyreek Hill, who's a huge, the nucleus of like their scheme and stuff like that, that's going to show us whether, Patrick Mahomes is going to take that next step. And, not to say he hasn't, but that's going to show if he can make these good to solid receivers, great receivers, and I think that's a major thing for a quarterback. Is like you're a great quarterback, or are you a quarterback that make the people around you that much better? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's going to be a great test for Mahomes as well. And yeah, I just want to see where where the whole AFC ends up. Because I think the Chargers are still a solid team. That's always been solid offensive star power, and they got a little bit of pieces on the defensive side too, so they'll be way more competitive. They're already competitive, but they'll be way more competitive. Yeah, so yeah, they got a good amount of pieces on the defensive side. But I'm very excited to see how the AFC ends up, just because the parity, right, especially on the AFC side, it's going to be very interesting. Will they keep Burrow upright to where he can be that? He already had a good season last year, but will he be another like 4,000 yards, 30-plus touchdowns guy going into next season? We'll see. So I'm very excited for the season for sure.
All right, what's our final topic, Malcolm? It's cool if you can't think of one. I got a question for you. If you can't think of one, I'm gonna give you a little bit more time. But
Go ahead. What's your question?
So, my friend, shout out to you, Dorian. Hopefully, you see this and hear this. But me and him get into this debate all the time about Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, and he always wants to say that Peyton Manning is better than Tom Brady, and his main factor is that he always likes to point out that Tom Brady had these championship defenses for him, and the coach didn't really always have great defenses, and so Tom Brady kind of got carried by how he had a better defense. But I also think to recognize at the same time that the Colts were better around Peyton Manning and how explosive that offense was. and that and sure, there were some games where he didn't make the Super Bowl because his defense let him down. I think there are definitely those games or the factors outside his control, like when the Steelers and Jerome Bettis won his only Super Bowl, Big Ben's first Super Bowl, how they ended up going to that because the defense causes a fumble and Nick Harper dumb self runs directly at Big Ben, who's the fastest dude on the field at that time, instead of running around him. Also, Mike
and then Vander
misses that
Jack,
field goal. It's kind of hard to blame him for that because that's out of
Vander
his
Jack
control.
field goal.
But like games, like I want to say, might have been like 2003 AFC like championship where he throws 4 picks and things like that. I think that's all on him, and I think what people, especially my friend, I kind of make fun of him, and I kind of call him like sort of this advanced casual. Like he's not a casual to where he doesn't know what's going on. He understands a little about football, but he's still sort of a casual in the sense that he doesn't really look at everything that's happening. Because to say that Peyton Manning is better because Peyton didn't have as good a defense as Tom Brady is to just completely ignore the fact that at this rate so far now, Peyton Manning has at one point, and I think they're all going to be Hall of Famers. Maybe not Dallas Clark, but at one point on his offense, he had Edgerrin James, who's in the Hall of Fame, Marvin Harrison, who's in the Hall of Fame, Reggie Wayne is going to be a Hall of Fame.
Reggie Wayne.
So it's like you had all these, like you, right?
Hall of Fame center.
Saturday, you had all this offensive weaponry. In a lot of those games, the reason why the Colts lost is because you didn't play to par, and the offense wasn't up to par like it should be, like they usually are. They weren't executing on all cylinders, and at the end of the day, that's because of him.
So are you basically asking if I agree with you?
I was going to ask you which one you taking over, but like for me, like I think it's also foolish to ignore the fact that Tom Brady has really had a lot of lackluster type of weapons and offenses compared to Peyton, and he still made do with it and has succeeded in a lot of the time with receivers who in offense who are not on the same type of caliber or par as somebody like Tom Brady has had. Like I said, like Peyton Manning has had. Like the one time where Tom Brady had like a super overpowered offense, they went 16-0. Now I understand they lost the Super Bowl, whatever. Asante Samuel drops a wide open pick six. I think people forget that. Sure, the helmet catch happens. That's an iconic play. But that man Eli threw the game away. He gave that ball to Asante Samuel, and he just dropped it. And it was a clear pick six. Would have been game over. End of the story. Oh, that would have been. But anyways, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning? Who are you going with?
Tom Brady.
Hold on. What's my pause? Damn, hold on. This one? Yeah.
I can take it a step further with the Tom Brady situation. Clearly can echo everything you said. I think another thing that I really highlight is that like the whole thing that Tom Brady's played with the great defenses for most of his career. It's not fully accurate. I want to say came into the league in 2000. The first 3 championships, you want to say that he played with the Hall of Fame, worthy defense. You can say that. I'll give you that because 2000 to 2004 was the heyday of like the Patriots defense and stuff like that, right? Teddy Bruschi. What's my other guy's name? A middle linebacker. I forget his name. But Richard Seymour. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, he had a bunch of different type of Lloyd. He had a bunch of different type of like, great defensive players on that side of the ball. But the thing is, on the offensive side, right, he didn't have any, weapons. He still made do with it, right? So, at a time period where you're going against high-powered offenses and stuff like that, I know the defense has to come up to play or whatever defense is in the championships. Tom Brady was still doing what he needs to do to win. And on top of that, like if you look at the list of all-pro players that Tom Brady played with over the course of his career and Peyton Manning's played over the course of his career, Peyton Manning has two times as many all-pro players that he's had the opportunity to play with over the course of his career. Also look at the fact divisions, right? Tom Brady played in a way tougher division than Peyton Manning did. Peyton Manning played the Jaguars. He played the Titans, who were tough in the early 2000s, but once it got to like the mid 2000s, the Titans only made the playoffs maybe once or twice. You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, Tom Brady playing with the Jets, who in 2009, 2010, tough team, Miami Dolphins, who had the league in a frenzy with the Wildcat in 2000s. The Buffalo Bills always played them tough, even though they weren't particularly a great team. They always played them tough. So tougher division, right? Then you go into the 2010s, where you know what I'm saying, where I feel like the line between them was pretty much distinguished and even further, because going to the 2010s, this is the time period where Tom Brady actually doesn't have a good defense. The team that he took to the Super Bowl in 2012, the second time he went against the Giants, right? That was a 29th ranked defense. This was the lockout season. The lockout season, he came back through 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, and led a 29th ranked defense to the Super Bowl. People don't talk about that. People also don't talk about the fact that the MVP that he won in 2011, he threw 36 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. The least amount of interceptions that you could throw in a season. I want to say maybe Aaron Rodgers threw like 2, but that's because he missed a portion of the season. But nonetheless, he, for the longest period of time, had the best QBR rating until, Aaron Rodgers broke it with 122. And he had the best touchdown to, interception ratio that you can have in NFL history with 36-4. And this is when he doesn't have that, all pro defense. And this is at the time period where his best receivers was Wes Welker, it was Deion Branch, it was a Rob Gronkowski who didn't hit his stride yet, and an Aaron Hernandez who didn't hit his stride yet. And this is all happening then. Then you go into the mid 2010s where, Peyton Manning goes to the Broncos and has one of the best offenses of all time, damn near. Those 50 touchdowns and, 7 in the first week, and he gets mollywopped by the Seattle Seahawks. Next year, what does Tom Brady does? He beat that same Seattle Seahawks team. It was a close game, but he beat that Seattle Seahawks team in a game in the Super Bowl. The same team with maybe 1 or 2 alterations, because I think that Seattle didn't have Browner that year. In fact, I think Patriots had Browner going into that Super Bowl. But nonetheless, Tom Brady beats that team, right? And then we can shift to the Peyton Manning side, where Peyton Manning is underperformed in countless playoff games, and he's probably one of the best quarterbacks to get one and done in the playoffs so many times. I think he has 8 or 9 one and dones where he has a home field advantage. Lost to the Jets, lost to who else he lost to? Lost to the Jets twice, actually, in the early 2000s and 2010 or 11. Lost to the Colts at home, young Andrew Luck, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Lost countless. I've lost to Baltimore in double OT, which they only went to double OT because he threw a late game pick in that overtime. The Patriots games that we said early in the early 2000s or whatever.
I think one team.
So he's had countless. Yeah, he's had countless times where he has lost because he underperformed in the playoffs or whatever. I'm not dismissing the fact that he did have bad defenses, but nonetheless, they were in positions to win the game, and it doesn't help if you throw 2, 3, 4 picks in a game, because that hurts more than anything.
I think another team that really stands out in terms of teams that really got the better of Peyton, especially in the playoffs. I think the Chargers it's another great example. I don't know what it was, but he could never. You lost beat the Chargers.
You lost to the Chargers. You lost to the Chargers when Phillip Rivers tore his ACL mid game. You lost to the Chargers. So there's that too. And again, I love Peyton Manning. I think Peyton Manning is a great ambassador for football. Love his specials that he had from breaking down the game. The smartest quarterback to ever grace the field. One of the most talented quarterbacks to grace the field. But a mixture of judging quarterbacks. We know the scale of judging players is different when you do regular players and quarterbacks. Quarterbacks, there's an inkling of success, clutch, and accolades and performance that you have to judge, as opposed to a Jerry Rice who's just pound for pound one of the more talented players, or or a Lawrence Taylor and stuff like that. Those guys could still be considered one of the greatest in their position without winning a championship to a degree. You know what I'm saying? At the quarterback position where you have an immense impact on the game, an immense impact on the culture, and an immense impact on your teammates, it's a different circumstance. And I feel like nobody has had a bigger impact on a game or their team than Tom Brady, especially in modern day football. He is the living GOAT of football. I think people were saying Joe Montana was the most clutch quarterback in the league, which I still for his time period, I still would say that he probably still was one of the more clutch quarterbacks in like football history. I would say him. I would say John Elway, but John Elway, even he had his turbulence going it because like it took him years to win his first Super Bowl. He didn't win his first Super Bowl until 98, 97.
Yeah, but I think part of the Elway thing is this, and this is what stands out to me, is that John Elway didn't really have, like, we talk about Peyton Manning not really have any defense. Like, John Elway used to carry teams who had no business going to the Super Bowl. He used to carry them into the Super Bowl. And they would get waxed, yes.
Dan Marino probably worse than that. Dan Marino literally did not, like, he spent majority of his career not having great defenses. It's still one of the best quarterbacks to do it. But nonetheless, I think they're both great quarterbacks, but I do think there's a distinct there's a separation between the two, just off, because you're not just judging off of like skill, talent, because at that point it just becomes like an intangible thing. Because it's just like that's the thing. Like we've had these arguments before with other people or whatever, right? Like you can judge off of talent if you want to, but at the end of the day, right, the most talented players we've ever seen don't have the career, longevity, or not even longevity, but like just doesn't have the resume, the accolades of another person. Like, for instance, Tracy McGrady, going to NBA, Tracy McGrady is probably one of the more talented basketball players you ever find. But his resume doesn't stack up well to other greats that we've seen over the course of, the history of basketball. You know what I'm saying? So, and even same thing in NFL. I think that, somebody like, who's a prime example? Somebody like, I'm trying to think of his name because he played for the Patriots and he also played for the Browns. He had a bunch of marijuana charges. Josh Gordon is probably one of the more talented receivers that you'll find in the NFL, but his resume doesn't stack up well against even somebody like Largent, like Steve Largent for the Seattle Seahawks, like back then. Like it doesn't match up well. Or even somebody like Hines Ward, or even somebody like, you know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't match up well. And again, like when you're talking about greats, because they're all greats, you have to be very meticulous in when you're breaking them down. And I feel like the thing that separates them is playoff success, clutch, and on top of that, who does more with less? You may say that, Peyton Manning hasn't had the luxury of having great defenses, but Tom Brady hasn't had the luxury of always having great offenses. People say he had Randy Moss. He had Randy Moss for 2 years. 2 years. He had Randy Moss for 2 years. If you want to say he had Gronkowski, yes, he had Gronkowski for a good amount of Gronkowski's career. I give you that. But Wes Welker is a receiver that he molded into a great receiver. Not to say that Wes Welker wasn't already great, but he molded him into a great receiver. Before that, Deion Branch peaked early in the 2000s, 2003. When he got him the second time around, he was pretty much keeping him afloat. You go to the Buccaneers, then I can say like that was a fully loaded deck. But he was the nucleus as to why they won a Super Bowl, because Jameis Winston had that same deck that he had. So yeah, no, I can co-sign everything you said in terms of just the distinct outlier between the two. I just feel like, Tom Brady's not even my favorite quarterback, but you have to acknowledge the fact that he's probably a walking testament of winning no matter what circumstances.
That'd be touring because, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, my favorite too. Growing up, being a Colts fan, watching him, great. But I also appreciate the greatness of the Michigan man, Tom Brady. So, hey. But go ahead and get this song playing, man. Oh, damn, that's a little too loud. Hold on, because, I got to talk, man. Appreciate y'all listening to this episode, man. Hopefully, I promise I'm going to get this one on YouTube. I know I haven't got the other two on YouTube, but I promise I'm going to get this one on YouTube as soon as I can. I might even skip the other two and put them on YouTube later, but I'm going to put this on YouTube. But pause the music real quick. Like we said at the beginning, or like I said at the beginning, we're on Riverside. So I just want to say this at the end. Anybody listening, anybody watching, we're Riverside. This gives us more flexibility to where now what we can do is we can start live streaming on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram, and also taking in live calls and live viewers, just because that's the type of plan we got. So with that being said, next month we'll probably decide a day, but just keep it in your head. So let's aim for like September like 10th, or no, because you usually work what? Usually are off on like Sundays and Mondays.
We'll figure out.
Yeah, let's just say it's not a hard day. Let's just say September 11th, right? Try to do our first live show. We're live streaming.
September 12th. I don't think we want to shoot for September 11th. Implications.
Man, I don't care about that.
You know what I'm saying?
I just don't. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Okay, fine. September 12th. We're gonna shoot for it later in the night, probably around like 8:30, like we're recording this episode at. First live episode where we're having people stream on YouTube. People can watch live on Twitter, tune in. And we'll also do like sort of just, a Q&A where it's like, okay, you guys can come in, you can ask us questions, we'll have conversations with you. I think that'll be fun. Let me restart the music. I'm sorry, Ahmad. Didn't mean to cut you off like that. But appreciate y'all listening to the show, man. That little side note. But hopefully you're having a good day, night, morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening to this. It's been your boy AY. It's been your boy Malcolm. And we out. Gonna have you rockin' bus, I swear to God. Mama, I do this for you. This for my brothers and my sisters.